Okay. Live stream starting. Yeah? Okay, let's start now. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the War Room. This one is for the new UFC 279 co-main event. Khamzat Chimaev against Kevin Holland over 5 rounds, which I feel like is a bit of a punishment to Chimaev. And I feel like it's a good, smart move from Kevin Holland as well, because although he's 0-2 in 5-round fights in the UFC, I feel like he's got the kind of relaxed, chilled, like calm style, as well as enough size and reach to be problematic for Chimaev over 25 minutes. Everybody who's joining back on the live stream, I appreciate you. Okay. So, hang on, I ain't turned my page. Gotta get my notes out. Okay. Khamzat Chimaev, Kevin Holland. Right. Khamzat Chimaev is 6'2", Kevin Holland is 6'3", so he has a 1-inch height advantage. He has a 6-inch reach advantage. Beautiful. 75 inches for Chimaev, 81 inches for Kevin Holland. I think I talked about him on the podcast, on the Pix podcast, being like Dalsim off Street Fighter. Like, I would imagine him to be able to just punch you from such a distance, him arms and legs. I mean, I've not checked his leg stat, but he looks like he's very kind of long and rangy and stinging and whipping. And Chimaev is much more kind of walk you down and ram it down your throat. Right hand from behind or right hand from southpaw as a power punch. With Holland, there's this kind of relaxed, flowing, spinning, like weird kung fu style to it, which really suits his build and his reach and also his kind of attitude towards it. Like, of course, like this is a weird situation, right? Because these two guys fell out a couple of days before. Then Chimaev misses weight, and then Kevin Holland is there with the beef already for this to be manifested as a co-main event. Then there were fire on the stage yesterday at the weigh-ins, which made it even more fun. I give you 101 reasons why it's played out like this. I honestly could. That's why I've not slept and drank too much green tea. But there does feel something, unaccidental about it, shall we say. I mean, Nate fighting Chimaev just seemed generally unfair. And I've spoken about this. Of course, I broke the fight down and spoke about Nate's chances. And I even did the dark room, which is still might be a bit of fun for you to watch if you haven't already. Potential outcomes for Nate, Scooby-Doo endings. But the reality was, even Bisping slated, shitting on me on the what's it called as well, the BT show, and then saying the same thing as me. He was going to get destroyed. It was, like, we can cling on to the idea that the wonderful will happen, but most likely we would have left the event with that awful taste in our mouth that we've just seen the end of Nate Diaz, maybe as a fighter entirely because of the damage he might have taken. Tony Ferguson moving up to welterweight and fighting the Leech, I was kind of not too fussed about it because he was 4-0. He was 0-4, and the Leech has got a hell of a right hand on him, and he's a big dude. This makes a lot more sense. The fact that Kevin Holland and Chimaev had a little bit of a back and forth just adds a bit of spice to this for me. I have no information and no details about Chimaev. Why he didn't make weight, I don't know whether it was a nutrition thing. I don't know whether it was just a deciding he didn't want to cut weight. I mean, I have seen that a few times with fighters. They just decide they're going to take the punishment, but he if that's the case, he overshot because the commission weren't going to let him fight over 5 pounds over the weight unless Nate agreed to a catch weight, which of course was the get out for Nate. Okay, so this fight could play out very, very similarly to the Diaz fight, but it won't be nearly as easy for Chimaev to win in the same way that he would have done against Diaz. Like, what I expected against Diaz was for him to have a higher striking effectiveness based on his power, and him being able to take Diaz down pretty much when he wanted and be able to dominate him on the floor and beat him up. And the conclusion of beating him up would be much quicker with Diaz because of the scar tissue. Kevin Holland on the other side, fairly easy to take down. Let me get his takedown defense stat up. It's not wonderful takedown defense statistics, but at the same time, it doesn't really need to be because he's got this kind of lazy man jiu-jitsu off his back where he's very good at kind of tying people up and making it very awkward for them. Yeah, 50% takedown defense. He's not really that bothered most of the time. But when he is taken down, like, I mean, of course, the criticism is that he can be kind of lazy and let fights slip away from him. I mean, so Vettori took him down 11 of 17 times and controlled him for 20 minutes. Like, that's not ideal, you know, over 25 minutes. But what it did do is show that, you know, he wasn't really that bothered about being in the fight. You could kind of tell that. Same with the Derek Brunson one. He was clowning, he was chatting to people outside the cage and stuff. He still didn't take much damage. He still wasn't really badly beaten up by two of the best middleweights on the planet. I mean, you know, like, these guys are wrecking people, knocking them out, choking them out. Like, Kevin Holland has got a good enough level of skill in striking and grappling to be able to just kind of hang out and coast and tie people up. And if you've got a 75-inch reach and you're sitting in someone's guard and you posture up to punch, their hand is reaching yours way before you've managed to touch their face. This is another benefit in the reach for Kevin Holland. And we have to, going back to the Dalsim similarity, we have to remember that punch that he caught Jacare with, off his back, it was like a ball and chain is how it looked. It was like a mace, like an old medieval weapon, where you've got a handle and a piece of chain and a big metal ball, sometimes with spikes on the end of it. And of course, it doesn't move at the same time as the handle, but the momentum that it generates as it's using that whipping motion is exactly what you see with Kevin Holland. Like with Chimaev, he's relaxed until he punches, and then when he punches, he drives it home. For Kevin Holland, he releases his fist like it's a weight on a chain. And that means that it can be slapped and smacked and landed from really unusual situations at quite a quick pace as well, because he uses his shoulders very good as the handles of the maces to swing and generate that power. Being able to generate that power off your back is incredibly difficult. But it adds another problem to Chimaev if he's in guard top. Because if he's got him smashed up against the fence like he did against John Phillips and he's ground and pounding him, he's also vulnerable for being hit back. He's also got Kevin Holland who can invert and chase his ankles, who can tie him up and attack triangles and arms and a variety of different submissions. He's also a big dude. Like, he's also not a former lightweight like Nate was. So even in the circumstances where Nate might be able to catch him in a triangle or set him up for a guillotine or whatever, that additional bit of strength that Chimaev's got might just get him out of it. And Diaz, 76-inch reach, he had a 1-inch reach advantage on Chimaev. Kevin Holland's got a 6-inch reach advantage on him. Guillotines, triangles, and rear naked chokes. Perfect for wrapping people's necks. The Darce choke against Tim Means, again, perfect arms for wrapping people's necks up, just like Tony Ferguson. He's got that ape index, which is massive compared to his height. Was it +5 ape index for Tony Ferguson? Why he's so good at Darcing. I think this is a really problematic fight for Chimaev the longer it goes. And I think Kevin Holland being able to kind of coast and relax and chill and tie him up and slow things down, and, you know, it's going to make Chimaev work that little bit harder. Because, like you've seen, I'm a big fan of Chimaev, of course, as we all are. But there's a flaw in his character when we see how fiery he is. That can be preyed upon by someone like Kevin Holland, who stays relaxed and teases and pokes. Like, Chimaev wanted to fight everybody in the crowd at the weigh-ins. That's why he was flipping everybody off, because that's all he could do. When Darren Till and Joaquin Buckley fell out backstage, what did Chimaev want to do? Hey, who are you? I'll fight you right now. Like that aggression to go may work against him over 25 minutes. And I feel like the 25 minutes was what Nate was going to have to use against him, but negotiating the fact that he's got scar tissue. Kevin Holland doesn't have that problem. He has a little lump here and there. I think was it Derek Brunson that lumped him up a little bit. He's not got the same kind of scar tissue and damage that Nate has. He's also 6'3" with a 6-inch reach advantage. It changes everything. This is really the fight that I want to see where Chimaev's at. This is really the fight that I want. Because Kevin Holland is an awkward dude with a lot of interesting skills in his game. Spinning elbows, spinning back fists, wild kicks, covers distance very well, takes punches very well. They kind of ride off him and they kind of roll through his frame. He's not stiff in any way. I think Chimaev's going to be able to take him down. I think most likely he's going to be able to nullify his submissions, but the longer this fight goes and the sweatier they get and the more Kevin Holland has been kind of coasting in those first couple of rounds, the more he's going to have to give in those last rounds. I just want to talk you. I noticed one thing, and I've not mentioned it. Where is it? It was against Derek Brunson, because I was watching that fight the other day, and I thought to myself, you know what? That last round was his best round, and then I looked at the statistics, and it was. So if you look through, so Kevin Holland went first round 25 strikes, second round 23 strikes, third round 39, fourth round 47, fifth round 56. Like, his striking output improved as the rounds went on. If he'd have actually wanted to have been in that fight more, I felt like he could have been more effective. And the fact that now he's moving down towards welterweight, it means he's not dealing with guys like Brunson and Vettori, who eventually, when they step in there, are going to be, 200 plus pounds. Having said that, Chimaev's probably going to be close to that. Okay. Quick one on the statistics, because I've been looking a bit more into the statistics, and I think it's interesting. And I go back to the knockdown ratio as well that I've talked about. So as well as Chimaev spending 46% of his time in top position, which is tied with Makhachev at 8 overall, he's also got a massive amount of control time. If you look at his first 4 fights in the UFC, they amounted to 12 minutes 54 seconds of fight time. He had control for 11 minutes and 54 seconds. So in 4 opponents, he allowed them 1 minute of control total. And that's going to be an interesting thing going in there against Kevin Holland, who is very, very difficult to control. It's going to be risky walking him down, way more risky than it was against Meerschaert, because you never know when he's going to spin or fly at you. It makes that pressing forward a little bit more. He has to be more tentative with it. The other thing as well, and this is an extension to the knockdown statistic that I was talking about. So, I've not got it written down here from Chimaev. So Chimaev has landed 378 strikes, and he landed 2 knockdowns. I don't remember exactly what the statistic is. 189-ish per knockdown. Okay. That's Chimaev's statistic. Something that someone mentioned, and it was kicking around in my brain as well. I'd just not had the time to go through all of the fights and figure this particular statistic out. But of course, of those 378 total strikes that Chimaev's landed, a massive proportion of them have been on the floor. So that's what I've done. I've now gone through and I've looked at each one of his fights to figure out how much of his strikes were landed on the ground, and it really is quite astonishing. For the first 4 fights, 124 against John Phillips, only 4 landed on the feet. That's 97% on the ground. 68 against Reese McKee. That's all of them. 100% of his strikes on the ground. He only landed 4 against Meerschaert. 2 of them were on the ground, but he was already in the other realm at that point. 50 strikes against the Leech. 55 on the ground. You can see there's a massive sway to those ground strikes. But then when he fought Gilbert Burns, it was different. Only 9% of his strikes were landed on the ground against Gilbert Burns. 124 total, with 11 landed on the floor. So, like, that Gilbert Burns fight gave us another insight into Chimaev's game. Now, of course, he did get caught. He did get hurt. He got caught with a big right hand in that one. The thing that knocked him down was actually the clash of heads, and I do think he is going to be able to take a big shot. And I think the fact that he's coming off that Burns fight, that feeling of that burning in the 3rd round and him getting told off by Andreas Michael in the corner at the end of the 2nd. What are you doing? Like, get it together. You're showing people weaknesses here that we don't want to be exposing, purely because he's being a bit overzealous, especially in that 1st round. Now, I don't think Kevin Holland's going to be able to stop most of his takedowns, but I do think he's going to be able to tumble and scramble and tie him up and make it very difficult for him. Drag him through those first 10 minutes and expend as little energy as possible, and then work for 15 minutes if I'm Kevin Holland. That's what I'm thinking. If I'm Chimaev, I'm going to use my wrestling to slow Kevin Holland down. Let me just pull this up. Where's the octagon? So I've talked about this before. Let me see if I can just turn this around so that the Instagrammers can see what I'm talking about. There we go. So the problem that you've got, let's say Kevin Holland is in the blue corner. The problem that you've got is that Kevin Holland is going to constantly be wanting to move in this space around the outside. And anytime Chimaev moves towards the fence to close him down. So say Chimaev's here right now. We have Kevin Holland backed up against the fence. As soon as Chimaev decides he wants to cut him off this way, you've got a variety of attacks that Kevin Holland can use to spin off the fence and to get himself back into the open. Against Meerschaert, we went through this with Meerschaert. He got rattled and he got pinned up against the fence very quickly and couldn't get off. With Kevin Holland, because there's a lot more of a threat of the unorthodox, I don't feel like Chimaev is going to be able to pin him up against the fence. He's not going to be able to do what he did against Meerschaert. Come out, push him, kick him, keep him up against the fence, and then knock him out. It's not going to be as simple as that against Kevin Holland, because Kevin Holland is not going to be as disciplined as being swept along in the way that he should be as a counter striker. What I expect is for Chimaev to try and keep Kevin Holland in these corners here as much as possible. And I think then he can control the centre and he can keep Kevin Holland in one of these spaces where he's not quite as problematic. Kevin Holland out in the open is a tornado of fists and elbows. It's a problem that Chimaev doesn't want. The benefit of being up against the fence here, so say if he's got Kevin Holland there, say if he's keeping him in that space, giving him a little bit more space and not keeping him trapped so you can walk onto those long arms and legs. Chimaev has got three options here, hasn't he? He's got attacks from this side, he's got attacks from this side, but he's also got that level change. That's the additional threat. I think if Chimaev is smart, he can lean into that wrestling threat and try and challenge Kevin Holland to defend some of these takedowns. That's where Chimaev's conditioning is going to be strongest. He's going to be in the wrestling because that's what he's been doing for longest. When it comes to striking, it's a different energy system that's a newer one to wrestling, so it's going to be a different taxation on his system. I think this version of attack for Chimaev is the answer, because you want to be dealing with Kevin Holland in the smallest space possible. If I can then start level changing and tying him up against the fence and using my head position and punching him, and then you might start to get to break him, and you might start to get that Kevin Holland that's like, let me talk to Dana for a bit. Who is there to talk to outside the... You know what I mean? Like, you get him kind of like losing interest a little bit if he starts to get frustrated. That'll be the smart thing for Chimaev to do. The one thing we have to bear in mind is there's a lot of pressure on Chimaev coming into this because A, he screwed this whole event by missing weight. B, he's pissed off Dana White, which means that his next few fights are not going to be as potentially as straightforward to the belt as as he thought. You can't put somebody in for a title shot if they win a fight at 168.5 or 180 or whatever the catchweight is. He's effectively removed himself from the title fight situation until he weighs back in at 170. So now he's stacked a couple more fights in his way, and they're not going to be easy ones. He's going to probably get a Colby Covington if the UFC can talk him or pay him into fighting Chimaev. He might get a Sean Brady, who of course is a beast everywhere. Like, there are a lot of really difficult fights for Chimaev, but he's been moved so quickly through the division with these opportunities because he's favourable of the UFC. Taking fights on short notice, moving up a weight class, generating massive numbers. As soon as you step on the scales 7.5 pounds over your weight class and you ruin a pay-per-view event, he's made life a lot more difficult for himself, unfortunately. And I hope there's a good reason why he missed weight, because if there isn't a good reason, it's going to be even worse. And the fact that he didn't seem to care on the scales, I don't think it helped the circumstance at all. Okay, before we wrap it, I just want to quick tell you about these, because these are pretty fascinating. So, like I said, Kevin Holland doesn't feature on any of the record books. He's not in any of the overall active fighter record books. Chimaev is. 10th for shortest average fight time at 5:35. 8th for top position, tied with Makhachev at 46%. 5th for bottom position with 0.12%. That amounts to 2 seconds. 7th for striking accuracy at 59.8%, and 2nd for strikes per minute at 7.89. Like, the stats are massively stacked in Chimaev's favour, but of course we're looking into a small bracket of time, a small amount of fight time, a small career in 11 fights. 5 in the UFC. Kevin Holland's 23-7, 13 knockouts on his record, 6 submissions. The one thing that did stand out, although he's never been knocked out, he has been rear naked choked twice. And that could quite easily be a scenario where I see Kevin Holland being a bit lazy on the floor, You know, they've been down there for a little while, and he's kind of got frustrated. He can't move Chimaev or sub him, and he might start to turn or invert to try and make something happen, and Chimaev might circle and take his back. I think his back defense is fairly good, and his rear naked choke defense is fairly good. But was it Alex Oliveira that ended up on his back at the end of the first round? What do you reckon? What do you reckon? We got any questions over there, Mystery? I've not really asked for questions, so you're probably not feeling particularly involved. Okay, let's wrap it there. There's loads to talk about, loads to think about. These are very exciting fights. I am thrilled that this UFC 279 has played out the way it has. The Leech against Rodriguez is going to be a banger as well. You've got two guys there that walk into range with a power rear hand. The one difference I would say is that the Leech throws a bit longer, and he's got a bit of a longer stance and a bit of a bigger head. Whereas Rodriguez is a bit more of a slick boxer with more combination potential and takedown defense. But then the Leech is a black belt in jiu-jitsu, although we don't really see that too much. Anyway, we're going off on tangents here. Chimaev against Holland. Let's summarize it. Holland is going to stay relaxed for 10 minutes. He's going to be spinning and whirling and throwing elbows and back fists and trying to be chaotic. Chimaev is going to try and control that and fire blanket that chaos, keep him up against the fence where he can start to predict some of his movements and keep reminding him of that level change. Chimaev setting up his takedowns and keeping Holland cramped up against the fence and ground and pounding him is probably the smart thing for Chimaev to do, if not tying him up against the fence and using his head position before he takes him down. When it's on the floor, Holland scrambling and trying to invert and chase submissions might expose his back to Chimaev. And I think, to be honest, that's the most likely scenario for me, is that Chimaev's going to probably take his back and choke him out somewhere within 3 rounds. But again, the later it goes, which was the conversation about the Diaz fight, the more interesting this gets. Holland's 0-2 over 5-round fights, but he takes very little damage, and he gets better as the fight goes on. So those last couple of rounds, Holland could really put his foot on the gas, and that's very, very new territory for Khamzat Chimaev. Loads of fun. All right. Enjoy these fights, and I'll see you next time.